Welcome to the What's So Smart podcast, powered by the Huntsville Madison County Chamber of Commerce. I'm your host, Clark Dunn. Huntsville, Alabama is known as a smart place, but really, what's so smart about it? In this podcast, we will talk to the leaders of Huntsville's economic and cultural development to answer that question. From rockets to genomics, from cyber to music, What's So Smart will explore the visionary and data-driven initiatives that make Huntsville so smart. Stay connected with us on all your social media platforms at A Smart Place. You can watch the full conversations on our YouTube channel at Huntsville, Alabama, USA, and be sure to subscribe wherever you listen. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we hope you enjoy this episode of the What's So Smart podcast. Well, welcome to the What's So Smart podcast. Super excited to talk with you today. Would you like to introduce yourself, and we'll get started there?
Thank you, Clark. My name is Sharné Rice. I am a native of Decatur, Alabama, known as Decatur where it's greater. I went to college at Auburn University, where I received my bachelor's. I moved back to Huntsville. We'll get a little bit into that story. Decided to go back to school and get a master's in systems and material engineering from Alabama A&M, and I currently work on Redstone Arsenal.
Yeah. So growing up here in North Alabama, right outside of Huntsville and Decatur, you didn't have a desire to come back here, and you didn't. I know you said, I'm going to go far off. I'm not going to stay here in Huntsville. Bigger things are out there. But your work and the job you do now has brought you back. Talk a little bit about that journey and kind of when that opportunity arose.
Absolutely. So graduating from Auburn in 2010, the job market was pretty rough. So I ended up moving back home with my parents, and I ended up getting a phone call that on the Arsenal, they were looking for a math major. I graduated from Auburn with an applied math degree. And so there we were. I started working on the Arsenal for reliability. And again, this was not something I had planned. My mom was an engineer who worked on the Arsenal back in the day for a missile program. And you know how it is growing up, you never want to do what your parents do. And lo and behold, I ended up filling her shoes.
Yeah. And so your job takes you between Huntsville and DC quite a bit. But I would assume the work you do, you could do it in a variety of cities across the country. What kind of works well with what Huntsville has going on with the Arsenal and kind of the close proximity with the Army and all that stuff that kind of works as a great spot for the job that you do?
Absolutely. So it's funny because once I started working on Redstone Arsenal, I considered it a mini DC because it truly is. There is literally a little bit of every command and organization on Redstone Arsenal. And many people don't realize how many opportunities are available, whether you're trying to get in on the Department of Defense side or with the FBI or NASA. It's such a growing area. And because Huntsville, the city itself, has become such a great landscape, you see how many more people want to move here.
Yeah. And then, over the last few years, you've seen a lot of influx and new things coming. We've talked with the Space Development Agency that's out there. And just like there's so much work, even as a Huntsville native, I feel like Huntsville and the Redstone Arsenal are almost separate. It's like they happen to be in the same city, but that life and the work that's being done on there is very smart work. I mean, but it is just interesting for those that maybe don't live here in Huntsville, that may be listening or in this community. How would you kind of describe the Arsenal and kind of maybe some unique features? You kind of alluded to it a little bit earlier.
Yes. So even though the Arsenal is it's a huge landscape, it's a huge military installation, it still feels so small and so homey. Like, it's amazing how you run into so many different people. There are so many different connections between, like I said, between working with NASA engineers. You realize that you have so many opportunities to collaborate. That's another great thing about Huntsville, is such a collaborative environment. And so I have truly appreciated what the Arsenal has to offer because it's such a broad space and a broad band of opportunity.
Yeah, so talk a little bit about some of the cool maybe projects or work you've been able to do here on Redstone Arsenal.
Okay, so starting out, again, coming from Auburn, graduating, so new kid on the block. My first job was in reliability, availability, and maintainability, also known as RAM. So I was able to work on maintainability, making sure that aircraft are able to stay in the air, which is a great thing, but also looking at ways that we can improve sustainment. So looking long term at ways we can improve different components on a helicopter system. So that was an awesome opportunity for me as I continue to move up the chain in the world, as you would call it, I decided to broaden my skill set. Again, with math, you can do just about anything. So I decided, again, following my mom's footsteps, I would go back and get a master's in engineering. So currently in systems engineering, there is, again, so much opportunity to do because a system engineer touches just about every piece or every product of a system. So through that, I've been working on missiles. So that's been very interesting to see how you can transpose different things you may learn from a helicopter or aviation environment and transferring that knowledge over to a missile environment and different skill set. And you mentioned earlier that I had done a little bit of travel up to the D.C. area. So I just came back from D.C. where I worked cybersecurity, something I had never thought about doing before. But an opportunity came up where I could, again, translate those skills that Redstone Arsenal has taught me, brought some different experiences up to the Pentagon, learned a little bit at the Pentagon, and then brought that information back home.
Wow. And that collaborative nature about the Arsenal is such a unique thing. I mean, I think, you can be in one building with the work you do, but there's 12 other people within a close proximity that are in different companies for doing different things all in the same space. And so I think, I would assume that ability just to kind of have that collaborative nature. And I think Huntsville's great beyond just the Redstone Arsenal with being collaborative. If you bring any ideas to the table, there's bound to be somebody that can kind of help you further those skill sets.
Absolutely. I see Huntsville as an opportunity, especially for small businesses, a great way to, again, collaborate with some of the larger companies that have been around for a long time. But there are so many opportunities for innovation in this area. So it's a great place for you to be able to start planting those seeds and growing your ideas, like you mentioned.
Yeah. So how important is the Redstone Arsenal, not only to the community here in Huntsville, but maybe even to the impact it's having nationwide?
Yes. So we have a lot going on in the world, as you may realize or recognize. The Arsenal provides so much support and backbone, not only for our Army, not only for our space and missile defense, and not only for space itself, but you will realize, even as you, say, take a trip to D.C., many people recognize how impactful Redstone Arsenal is itself. There are so many impactful things that we continue to do for our nation and our country. And of course, bringing our soldiers home is number one.
Yeah. And I mean, as your work now kind of keeps you here in Huntsville, but Huntsville's continuing to grow and you've been able to see it. I mean, from growing up here to kind of what Huntsville is today is almost complete opposite ends. What other elements of Huntsville kind of keep you here, and what do you love most about the community and then the city itself?
So from a community perspective, I love the fact that I can go just about anywhere and provide impact. And that's always been something very important to me from a volunteer and a community aspect. So Huntsville has been a great place for nonprofits. You realize how many different organizations really, truly support this community and support its growth, but also support in making sure that no one is left behind. So I truly appreciate being able to volunteer and to give back in ways to the community. It's super important to me. And then from a city aspect, I appreciate, the music scene is growing. I'm a big concert girly, so I am enjoying that the music scene is picking up. We're getting more restaurants, and the social scene is actually picking up. So I do appreciate that. It was ironic, going to a larger city for a while, and all I could think about was, I think we should bring this back to Huntsville. I think we should bring that back to Huntsville. So again, to me, Huntsville is a great melting pot where we're always looking for great opportunities for the city.
Yeah, and I mean, there's so much smart work being done. We talked a little bit about it earlier, just the diversity that's happening on the Arsenal. How do you think, and like looking ahead, that diversity and just the variety that the Arsenal has will continue to allow Huntsville to be a smart place and continue to propel it forward in the rankings that we've seen?
Absolutely. So, at first when you think of smart, automatically go to engineers because it's a billion of us here in Huntsville, it seems like. But when you also think about the amount of technology that's being developed in this area and how that the seeds of technology then promote your programmatic aspects as well as promote business aspects and more personnel, more jobs, and more companies coming to the area. It's very exciting because, again, we're such a smart place, such a diverse place to work, and the talent is so broad. I realized, in DC that a lot of people kept saying, yeah, I'm trying to get to Huntsville. And I was like, well, let me tell you a little bit more about the area because of the amount of landscape and talent opportunity that we have here. So, yes, it is a smart place.
Would you have ever thought that when you were thinking, I don't want to live in Huntsville or do what my mom does, that now you'd be promoting Huntsville when you're in other places? And
absolutely not. Look, absolutely not. When I first graduated, I applied literally everywhere but in the state of Alabama. Wow. I was determined not to come back here. And lo and behold, I ended up here. And it's, Huntsville, again, it has grown on me because now as an adult, you see things as a child and you're like, okay, whatever, I want to get away. But as an adult, you realize what opportunities are here. But at the same time, for me, cost of living is also important. Mm-hmm. So being able to balance that and still have all the fun that I want to have has been truly wonderful.
Thinking about the work you do in the Arsenal and kind of the experiences you've had here in Huntsville, is there a unique moment or a unique story that kind of stands out from the work you've been able to do here on the Arsenal and here in Huntsville?
So for a unique moment, I will have to say being able to go to the schools and talk about, what I do or showing a video of a missile or a helicopter flying around and being able to instill that knowledge base into our children is so important. So that has been truly wonderful for me. And I love that the fact that, we now have the cyber school here where we're able to engage this next generation early because it's important for us to make sure we bridge the gap.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you taking the last little bit talking about the work being done on the Arsenal and your kind of journey to kind of stay here and call Huntsville home. It's been exciting. I think, even as a Huntsville native, there's so much that goes on the Arsenal that it's having conversations like this kind of bridges the gap from just the normal people in the community, the people that work on the Arsenal, and kind of allowing it to kind of have that educational that needs to happen. And so I enjoy this conversation, but thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thanks so much for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the What's So Smart podcast. Stay connected with us on all your social media platforms at A Smart Place. You can watch the full conversations on our YouTube channel at Huntsville, Alabama, USA, and be sure to subscribe wherever you listen. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we hope you enjoyed hearing more about what makes Huntsville so smart.